What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I'll be making a schedule prediction for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season, and I'll also do a subsequent conference rankings video once I finish every single team in a specific conference, just as a little synopsis of all of my schedule predictions for that specific conference. And with all that being said, anyway, let's go ahead and get into the Auburn Tigers schedule predictions as I move through the SEC conference first. So just initially, some quick thoughts that I have on the Auburn team heading into the 2022 season. First off, I want to say that I am not high on Auburn at all next year with all of the off-the-field issues that they have in a multitude of areas, not just with the coaching staff. It's really hard to have high expectations for them next year. The quarterback situation is just not good. There are no very good options there, in my opinion, regardless of who they go with, be it Finley or Calzada or somebody else. Harsin basically has no support from his administration either. There were a huge number of transfers out of the program this past season and not that many transfers into the program. They still have Tank Bigsby, but that's really about all that they have going for them, in my opinion. And it also doesn't help that there's been extreme coordinator turnover at Auburn as well, not to mention just how insanely hard their schedule is this year and every year, really, being in the SEC West with Georgia as their cross-divisional game every year. It's always a brutal schedule for Auburn. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the schedule. We'll start off with just the guaranteed easy wins for Auburn. They have absolutely no business losing. And those games are Mercer, San Jose State, and Western Kentucky. These teams just have no realistic chance of beating Auburn next year. They really aren't worth talking about, in my opinion. Those games should all be easy, pretty much guaranteed wins. And so that brings us to Penn State as the first game I want to talk about. And this is a game that could be interesting, especially just because of how good last year's game ended up being, with this one being at home in Auburn. However, Penn State just has much more continuity and even talent at this point. I think they'll be a much better team than they were last year even, and I think Auburn's going to be worse than they were last year as well. I have Penn State winning this one by 2 scores or more, to be honest, although Auburn does have an outside shot of winning here. You know, and it just, if Penn State struggles on the road in an SEC environment early on in the season, could, sway into Auburn's favor there. I just think Penn State's a noticeably better team. I don't see it happening, but it is a winnable game for Auburn. They have an outside shot in this one. And then that moves us on to Missouri, also at home. It's another potentially winnable game for Auburn. It's, home against Missouri. It's another team that doesn't have a clear quarterback option, kind of like Auburn does. They have a relative lack of talent compared to some of the top teams at the SEC level. And, Missouri's just a decently good team next year. They're going to have some interesting weapons to work with, particularly Luther Burden, the 5-star freshman. However, I just don't think that, they're going to be very good. I think both teams are going to be pretty evenly matched. And with it being in Auburn, I've got Auburn getting a win here. It's a very losable game as well, though. Missouri could end up just being a better team than them. But also Auburn could just end up being an overall better team than Missouri as well. I'm going to lead Auburn here, like I said, mainly because it's at home in Jordan-Hare. I think it's going to be a super tough game, though. Very hard fought. I think Auburn does, like I said, find a way to get a win. But don't overlook Missouri here. They're a very scary team. And then we have LSU, another home game for Auburn here. And this is a team that's just hard to get a beat on next year. They have a lot of coaching and roster turnover to deal with, as well as their own quarterback uncertainties. Plus, this game is, again, at home, gives Auburn a very good shot here. However, I think LSU is a more talented team than Auburn, just overall roster-wise. I think they'll be better coached, to be honest, and I trust their quarterback situation more than I trust Auburn's, even though it's also unknown. I feel like really any of their options are better than any of the ones that Auburn has. So I have LSU getting a win in this one in a decently close game that, again, could go either way, but again, I lean LSU here. Next game up is at Georgia. And I know this is a rivalry game, but technically anything could happen. But come on, let's be realistic here. Georgia is noticeably better than them at every single position. They are better coached, and they're at home. This game should be a blowout of 3 or more scores, to be honest. I really don't see much of a chance, if any, that Auburn gets a win here. Big win for Georgia, I think. Next game is at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is a team that I'm decently high on next year. I trust their offense. I think the defense will be somewhat improved, although still not a great defense by any stretch of the imagination. I think Ole Miss is the more talented team overall. I think they're a better coached team, to be honest. I have them winning here as well. It won't be an easy win. I think you could still see it end up being a double-digit win for Ole Miss, but it's not going to be an easy cakewalk, so much as I think the Georgia game will be for Georgia. But again, Ole Miss, better team. They're at home. I think they're better coached. I think they win pretty big here. Then you have home against Arkansas, and Arkansas is a team, again, that I'm very, very high on next year. Even with this game being in Auburn, Arkansas is just a better team than Auburn in almost every way. They have a far superior quarterback. I honestly think that their culture and coaching staff is also far superior at this point. I see them getting a pretty decently easy win here late in the season. As far as SEC wins go, none of them are ever really easy in the SEC, but I think Arkansas probably wins by 2 or more scores here. And then there's at Mississippi State, and this game is much more evenly matched than some of the others that I've been talking about here. I think Will Rogers is a noticeably better quarterback than any of Auburn's quarterback options next year, though. I think that's going to make the difference in this game, to be honest, especially with it also being on the road in a very hostile environment. The cowbells are going to be rolling. I've got Mississippi State getting a win here. It's going to be a hard-fought game. Could go either way, kind of down to the wire. I'm going to lean Mississippi State, home field advantage, and the better quarterback. And then we have the Texas A&M game. Again, it's in Auburn, but it's another game where Auburn's just going to be severely overmatched roster-wise. They don't have much of a chance, in my opinion. A&M is just a much better team than Auburn in basically every way. I think they win pretty easily here. Not much to be said about that one, in my opinion. And then they finish it out with at Alabama, and once again, a team that just completely outmatches Auburn top to bottom. Auburn shouldn't have much a chance in this one either. But it is the Iron Bowl, so anything can happen in the Iron Bowl. Just look at last year's game if you don't believe me on that one. But I really do think Bama's going to roll pretty easily here. All indications are that they would, especially being at the end of the season. I think the team will have sort of begun to give up a little bit on Brian Harsin for Auburn if the season goes the way I have expected it to go up to this point. And so I think things are going to end up getting pretty rough there at the end. I think Bama rolls decently easily. And so that would make Auburn 4-8 on the year, likely the bottom team in the West, which I know people are going to get upset about, but I really just don't see much of a different path for them, to be honest. I mean, they could maybe be a little bit better than this, but they have a lot of issues going on around that program. Like I said, there are a few more winnable games on the schedule, maybe Mississippi State, maybe LSU, some teams like that they could maybe, sneak out some wins with, maybe Penn State even. But honestly, even if they win those games that are, tough, winnable games that I think they'll probably end up losing, they're still, 6-6, maybe 7-5, most likely 6-6 though. And that's kind of best case scenario for Auburn next year, in my opinion. I think Harsin's probably going to be gone at the end of the year, especially if Auburn goes 4-8 like I have them going. Even 5-7, honestly, even 6-6 or 7-5, I think Auburn probably gets rid of him. I think they've been kind of trying to move on from him since before this upcoming season. And just as a program right now, Auburn doesn't have a very clear immediate future, and therefore it's not a very bright immediate future. They don't know where they're going to be going. You don't know who the head coach is going to be. You don't know who your coordinators are going to be. You don't know who the quarterback is going to be. A lot of uncertainty around Auburn in a very, very, very tough conference and an even tougher division. Overall, I just don't have much hope for Auburn in the 2022 season. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you agree and or disagree with me on the Auburn schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think they will have next year and who all they will lose to and what kind of upset wins they might get if they get some. Also, if you made it this far in the video, be sure to go ahead and leave a like because it helps out the channel a lot, and subscribe for more college football content in the future. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.